Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 8th of May. Bank holiday weekend, of course, but not for me. I'm flying solo this morning, folks. So we'll talk all things Rangers, of course, winning against Aberdeen yesterday at Ibrox by a 0-0. Todd Cantwell with the only goal of the game in the second half. But lots of interesting talking points coming out of the post-match press conference from Michael Beale following the game. Let's talk, first, before we look into the ins and outs of what went on at Ibrox yesterday. As you know the drill by now, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. Seneca Hair Restoration, the #1 hair transplant group in Europe. If you're looking for some hair restoration, perhaps restoring some lost self-confidence, then these are the guys to go to. And as ever, I've popped the all-important links in the description box, so do go and check them out. Right, if you want to get your point across, folks, this morning, you can do so. You know how to do it. Just bung your comment in the description box. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the comments that are coming in, and I'll get to as many of them as possible. Right, of course, as I mentioned, Rangers winning yesterday by a 0-0. Interestingly, a number of changes to the starting lineup. I think it was understandable given the stage of the season we are now at. Robbie McCrory coming in for his first start since, of course, that double-header against Alashkert and Celtic at the beginning of last season. So another clean sheet to Robbie's name. He did speak after the game, and we'll touch on what he said. He spoke to Rangers TV. Robbie says, "It was enjoyable to be back playing again. It's been a long time coming. I've been waiting for a while, but it's just about keeping yourself right. The bonus is that we won and I kept a clean sheet." He was asked how he's assessed the performance. He says, "I think we had a lot of chances in the game. We could have been more comfortable at an earlier stage, but when it's 0-0 for long periods and Aberdeen were getting moments, it can make it seem as if we're more even. But as soon as we got the goal, it gave us a bit of breathing space. I thought we were quite dominant at times, but we just need to be more ruthless." He was then asked if he was happy with the saves that he made. He says a lot of their chances were coming from counter-attacks, and it was just about being ready for that. Aberdeen's front two have done well this season and scored quite a few goals, so it's just about being ready for those moments. And he was asked what was the message from the manager to Robbie before the game. He says, "He didn't need to speak to me too much before the game. The last time that he was here in the day-to-day stuff, if you train well and keep yourself right, you'll be more comfortable going into a game after a while out. If you do the opposite and you slack off, it can be uncomfortable, and it's a professionalism, and you need to be on it every day." What do you make of Robbie's performance, folks? Thought he did well. It never had a lot to do yesterday, of course, but when called upon, he was reliable, of course, as well. So let us know what you made of Robbie. Luke Gibson gets in touch. He says, "Is McCrory our #1, or will we look for one?" I think that Rangers still looking to bring in another goalkeeper, of course. Jack Butland is the name that's been heavily rumoured to be joining in the summer. Of course, at the Crystal Palace goalkeeper on loan at Manchester United, experienced former England international at that as well. But it will be interesting, I think, if McCrory at least will be promoted to #2, if that was to materialise in the summer. I think people would be quite satisfied with that. It's widely expected that Alan McGregor, of course, will hang up the gloves, and John McLaughlin will move on to pastures new. Ian Thompson gets in touch. Morning, Ian. Robbie McCrory had pass marks for me, albeit he wasn't that tested, and game was a non-event. Yeah, of course, the first of 5. I was going to say dead rubbers, but more or less that. Next game, of course, you want to win, with it being Celtic coming to Ibrox. But in the grand scheme of things, there is nothing to play for but pride. Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in then. Simple Simon Hadapai said, "McCrory should keep the gloves until there is someone who is better to take them." Yeah, I've said that on record. I think McCrory gets all the games for me from now until the end of the season. I did say before that I think Alan McGregor deserves that send-off in the final home game of the season against Hearts. Whether that's starting the game, I'd be more inclined perhaps at bringing them on at the tail end, a la the Scottish Cup final last season for that emotional goodbye, or perhaps starting and then being subbed at some point as well. So, yeah, it will be interesting. But for me, definitely McCrory has the gloves until the end of the season. Susan says Robbie did really well. Yeah, no complaints. Gordon Stewart says we still need a main keeper. Totally agree. As I mentioned, Butland is a guy that heavily rumoured to be heading up the road. So I think that would be a good addition, especially on a free. I know he hasn't played much football lately. And as I touched on before, he's one of those, he was very highly rated when he was coming through at Stoke, and then fell away a little bit. Had a couple of clangers, but most big goalkeepers these days, especially down south as well, some of the best goalkeepers that are throwing them in at the moment. So, yeah, listen, I think it's a good bit of business on a free, but Robbie, I'm sure, will be doing all he can to make sure that it makes that spot his own. Right, let's get to a few. James Skeen agrees, yep, totally. Got to stick with Robbie for the next 4 games. And John Brown gets in touch. Morning, John. I think Robbie done enough considering he didn't have much to do. Yeah, that seemed to be the general consensus, isn't it? I think Rangers weren't necessarily in any under any duress or there was any risk of losing the game or anything like that. But it was like this comment came in a few moments ago. It was pretty much a non-event. Right, let's get to Michael Beale's press conference then. Lots of interesting takeaways, as there always is when the Rangers manager speaks. He was asked, it was an experimental lineup today. Was that with a view to the future? He replied, yes and no. Some players will definitely be here next season, but there will be some new faces and there are 1 or 2 injuries. I thought we had good moments with the ball all day. Rabi and Fashion had 2 minutes in the first half where they linked up well, 2 moments in the first half where they linked up well. Sometimes I feel we are the most wasteful team in the final third that I've ever seen. The amount of chances that we have in the game that we don't take. Ridvan did well. You'll touch on him shortly. John Suter came on and did well, while Robbie had a really strong performance. The save early on was a really big moment, but it looked assured all day. Fair play to him after not playing for so long and getting a clean sheet. Yeah, 100% record for Robbie. Not too bad going. Can the wastefulness be changed, or does it need an influx of new players, he was asked. Michael Beale responded, you saw a difference when Alfredo came on in terms of energy and not a positive change. We'll discuss that in more detail shortly as well. We'll need a focal point in the team. Antonio isn't fit at the moment, and Alfredo will obviously be moving on. Fashion and Rabi gave a different type of front line today, and it was nice to see Yanis had some nice touches after being out for a year. Across the whole game, we had some good passages of play, but we need to be more decisive if we want to feel at ease at the end of the game. Barry has got them organised. They came off the back of 7 wins and 5 clean sheets. Yeah, absolutely. He's revitalised Aberdeen, of course. That's why he's been given the job on a permanent basis. He was asked about Robbie's performance. He produced a solid performance. Does that give you a bit of a question for the rest of the season? And Michael says that I spoke to Robbie during the first week that I came in. There's an element of trust because there was a period of time that he was injured. He played a couple of B-team games to warm up for today's performance. He's been over ready, and I thought he put in a strong performance today. We've got 3 good goalkeepers and a young one who needs exposure and an opportunity for himself more than anyone else. Robbie just wants an opportunity to show he's a really good goalkeeper. He was in the Scotland squad not too long ago, and if he's playing, I expect him to get back in. He was then asked about, does the fact he's played in an Old Firm before give you confidence to play him next week? There's a trust between me and him. We see each other every week, and he knows what I think of him. I was here when he played his last Old Firm game, and he knows what I thought of him going into that. I don't think he'll be phased going into any game. So interesting points there from Michael Beale. Just before we touch on what the rest of the press conference, let's get to a few of the comments that were coming in. The point on Morelos was telling, wasn't it? Didn't beat about the bush. It is fair to say. Gordon says a hard choice for striker at the weekend. Of course, Fashion started up top. Rangers have got an issue up there next week, don't they? He's not exactly in form at the moment. Fashion Sakala, Alfredo Morelos, I think his comments from the manager there was interesting. That would sort of tell me that, he doesn't deserve a place in the starting lineup based on form. This comment coming in, he's spot on with Morelos. We need a positive and ruthless mentality. moving forward. This comment as well just echoes that. Quite right to slate Alfie. What do you think of the manager's comments? Do you think it was harsh at all? I'd like to hear what your points are with regards to that. I think it's fair to say Morelos has been off the boil pretty much all season, apart from a couple of flashes here and there. He certainly looks like a guy who's checked out. I know he came off the bench at the weekend, but does he play? Does he play next week? Xander says, morning Xander, known Beale, he'll start Alfie at the weekend. And just like last season, Hugo Beale says we have no front line, lots of new players required. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What does he do next week, folks? Let us know. I don't have much faith if he starts Fashion up there, up front, leading the line. Stephen Gillespie raises an interesting point. Ure or Lovelace. We were decent in midfield, but there is no one natural up front. We are looking, I think, at the likes of the B team lads now, because there is no one else. If Antonio Cholak, find out the extent of his injury during the week when we speak to the manager, but I think I don't think he's the long-term answer, Antonio Cholak, but if he's anywhere near fit, then I think I'd rather have him leading the line than any of the options that are available at present. Ryan Stewart raises a point. Morelos has been a disgrace this season, all the way back to under GVB before PSV. Beale finally had enough as well. Yet it certainly appeared like his patience had run out after hearing the manager's thoughts yesterday. Interesting point from Ross, though, a differing view. Beale seemed to lack a little bit of class yesterday, I felt. I have seen that. Some supporters feel that the comments maybe a little unnecessary. But listen, it's all about opinions, isn't it? So, that's an interesting point there. Ian Thompson, I feel a bit annoyed at Morelos not turning up yesterday when he got on, a bit like Josh today. Joshua T's credit is on holiday. I was booked well in advance, Ian, so well-deserved time off, so no problem at all with that. Interesting point here, RFC 5 stars. Ridvan, Robbie and Rabi should all start next week. What do you make of Ridvan's performance, folks? I thought he did well over on that left-hand side. I think there's been a clamour to play him for some time. Like McCrory, he starts all the remaining league games for me. I don't think there's any reason to bring back Borna Barisic. Of course, he was injured for the weekend's game anyway. But for me, I'd like to see more of Ridvan to get an idea if he can nail down that position next season. I know there was a bit of discussion last week. We were on the video about potential outgoings in Ridvan. Well, I wrote a piece on this during the week where if he can't take over from Borna, then Rangers can't have a player that they've spent so much money on just warming the bench. So he has to win that battle, Ridvan, or else Rangers need to look for a buyer, and I don't think they would be short of offers in the summer. But yeah, I thought he was decent yesterday, and I'm all for him getting more game time from now until the end of the season. Rabbi Matondo's an interesting one. What do you make of his performance? I've seen some differing views. Some saying he was useful, he did well, looked bright yesterday. Some saying he wasn't really at the races again. However, I think Ryan Kent, very much like Alfredo Morelos, is checked out. He's heading for pastures new by all accounts. So Rangers have a position out there on that left-hand side next week and going forward. Is Matondo the man to start, do you reckon, folks? Or is there anyone else that you would like to see given a run out over there? Just on the forward line, Dan says, stick Broxy Beer up front. Can't do any worse, I think, than what we've got at the moment. Gordon says, give Hadji a chance, Defo. What do you make of Hadji as well, coming back in at the weekend? It's interesting to hear him speak prior to the game in his pre-match press conference, talking about his time out injured. I thought it was very interesting in talking about the struggles of coming back and then obviously trying to get minutes here and there. It's difficult when the players are all up to speed in the squad and you're basically starting a pre-season in January time. So Hadji's had a fight on his hands getting up to match sharpness, but good to see him getting game time yesterday. And he's one of a number, I think, should get the majority of minutes from now until the end of the season. Should he start next week? Let us know if you reckon that he should get a shout in the starting lineup when Celtic come to town World's Greatest DJ agrees, yeah. Ridvan needs a run of games, yeah, totally agree, to see if he's up to scratch. Right, let's get to just on Morelos, just on Beale's comments on Morelos. Peggy gets in touch. Morning, Peggy. No, Beale wasn't harsh. He's been very faithful to the players. There's a time to get harsh. Yeah, it certainly seemed like, he's just run out of patience with Morelos, hasn't he? And I mean, it was quite telling, his comments. I do wonder now if we'll see Alfredo in a Rangers jersey again. I suspect we may do, perhaps off the bench, like as I mentioned with McGregor with that final home game of the season against Hearts. He may get an opportunity to say goodbye to the fans, but listen, for me, my viewpoint on Morelos is clear. Rangers have got their money back and then some for Alfredo. He's been a brilliant servant to the football club, top goal scorer, of course, in Europe for them, for Rangers in a short time there, surpassing Ali McCoist. He was sensational in those Europa League campaigns, of course, wasn't he? But this season, he's just not been at the races, and as the comment a few points ago mentioned, he let Rangers down at the start of the campaign. It was a big call from Gio to drop him for that huge Champions League qualifier against PSV. If you remember when he gets sent off against Hibs, that could have backfired. But of course, Čolak netted the winning goal. It seems a lifetime ago now, but that was a poor. He's had discipline problems in the past. We know that. But in the main, I think time will be kind to Alfredo Morelos, and I think he has delivered over the piece for Rangers over, what has he been here now? What six? Is it going to be six seasons now? I think it is. So it's a long time to be at a football club for a player in modern football. So I've no qualms about him going and seeking a new challenge elsewhere. And also on the flip side as well, I don't think he's deserving of a new contract at Rangers based on what's been served up this season. Ditto Ryan Kent. Although with the outlay that's been spent on Kent, I think there still are question marks as to if Rangers have got value for money there. I know he has delivered in Europe, and the money that's helped bring in, but over the piece. Very much, I wrote a piece about Kent last week, actually, and I detailed, of course, he's the second most expensive signing at the club. I detailed Tore André Flo, who had a decent goals-to-games ratio, but he'll always be judged on that £12 million outlay. And over the piece, he's widely regarded as a bit of a flop, and I just wonder how Kent's time will be regarded as we look back, wherever he ends up. So, both those players heading out the door in the summer. Right, let's get to a few comments before I head on. Ian Thompson says that I think Morelos will regret leaving Rangers as his career moves on, but it's been his own doing. Yeah, you do wonder if both players will regret. I think not many players leave Rangers and go on to bigger and better things, do they? So, listen, I'd be surprised if both go on and go to a bigger club than Rangers. I don't think they will, especially Morelos. Will be interested to see where he ends up and what club he'll go to. I'm sure he will be attractive to a number of clubs on a Bosman. He will be someone that I'm sure many clubs will be keen to bring in to add to their squad, but where his destination will be remains to be seen. Right, let's get to more at Michael Beale's press conference. He was asked, how confident are you and how confident should the fans be that you can wrestle the title away from Celtic next season? Pardon me, he says, that's what we strive for every single day. We are busy planning for next season and assessing who will be on that journey going forward. We are unbeaten at home in the league, and our away form since I returned has been strong. Most of our problems are not between the two boxes. We made mistakes at both ends of the pitch, and it's clear we can't make those mistakes if we want to be a successful team. We've got 4 games we want to end strongly and be back stronger after the summer. He was asked about Ben Davies, of course, that slight injury knock there. He says, okay, I think it's a slight problem with his hamstring. We'll assess it in the next 24 hours and see. I thought he started well, and John Souttar done well too. Yeah, I thought he did well when he came on John Souttar yesterday. Nico Raskin and Todd Cantwell have shown impressive attitude since arriving. How important is it to continue to bring players like that to the club? Beale said, in a few years, I think the fans will look back on 1 or 2 players more fondly than they do today. They will see the goals they scored, games they played in, and the moments they had. Those 2 have came in with a freshness and energy attitude and energy are the best friends or worst enemies of every player. If you have success, then that energy has to grow, and you can't change. Those two players have started well, but they've achieved nothing at Rangers yet. Everything is in front of them, and I expect them to kick on another 10 or 15% next season. I want to get your thoughts on Nico Raskin, folks. I've seen a few comments, especially on social media yesterday. There's some viewpoints that a bit concerned about him in the last few games, not looked up to what he did, was showing when he arrived. I'm not too sure if that's a fitness issue. I thought he looked a bit off the pace last week against Celtic. A few misplaced passes. Of course, he has been out with an injury. Bit safe yesterday against Aberdeen as well. Andrew Gill says Raskin was very poor. Do you agree with that folks? I think for me, Todd Cantwell has come in and hit the ground running, looks a brilliant player. Cannot wait to see him next season after he has a pre-season. I think with Nico as well, once we get a pre-season in him and his legs, get good players around about him, I think he'll be a real asset for Rangers. But I'm interested to hear what your point is on the Belgian. David says, a harsh on Raskin when the people in front are non-existent. And James Tony says, Cantwell and Raskin have the perfect attitudes. The rest of the squad should take note. And this is a bit left field here. I'm not too sure about this. Luke Cope gets in touch. Unpopular opinion, but Raskin needs loaned out. He's not good enough to start every game. Miles away. I'm not entirely sure that I agree with that look, but listen, as I mentioned, it's all about opinions. He's going nowhere. I can tell you that he's not getting loaned out. That's for sure. Yeah, listen, I've seen a few comments about that. Not too impressed with Raskin of late. DK says Raskin is a myth. I've lost respect for him over those delusional Chelsea comments. Listen, I think he's just a young lad. He's came to Rangers and. Listen, I don't begrudge him those comments. Listen, I think every player that comes to Rangers at that age, they will be looking to play in the Premier League at some stage in their career. I understand why it gets a backup of some supporters as well. You don't really want to hear that they want to be joining other clubs, don't you? But yeah, listen, I think Nico Raskin, I'm over the piece. I think he's been a good addition. I think he needs game time, and next season I think that's when we see the best of him. Kev Armstrong at that point, that's not unpopular, that's mental. Yeah, listen, it's all about opinions, of course, and Raskin's certainly one that I've seen is dividing opinion at the moment. So yeah, and Will 480, you're rightly there, buddy, says he also said he rejected Genk and Bruges to join Rangers. Yes, so. Listen, I think it was a bit of a scalp getting him in. A highly rated player at Standard Liège, of course, at the time. And highly rated Belgian under-21 international. I think he's going to be a top player. But listen, I think that the time to judge Michael Beale for me is next season, and ditto the players. So yeah, I'm not going to go hammer and tongs at Raskin at this moment in time. Tam Brown, interesting point. Morning, Tam. Raskin and Redvan were frustrated by the lack of movement in front of them. That's why they had to play safe. As I touched on earlier on, the front line is pretty much non-existent at the moment. So that is certainly an area of the pitch that we need strengthening in the summer. I've said on record, I think Rangers need 4 forward players, at least minimum, 2 strikers and 2 forward, whether that's wingers or what have you. I think they need real strengthening in that area of the pitch. Neil McLean, just on the issue of Cantwell and Raskin, there have been good signings. He says, imagine how good they'll be after the pre-season. Yeah, totally agree, Neil. I think everyone can't wait for the season to end, can we, and get into that pre-season. Michael Beale has spoken on record about how important it's going to be for next season. It's going to be huge, and I think, of course, he's been working away, trying to get players in for the start of that pre-season. Of course, we've got huge Champions League qualifiers coming up, and the quicker he gets more players of his liking in, the better, I think, for heading into those huge games. Big money at stake, of course, as well, for progression to the group stages. Just finishing up on Michael Beale's press conference, he was then asked again, is it confirmed that Alfredo Morelos won't be here next season? I thought I confirmed that a few days ago. So there you go, folks. And how easy will it be to reset next season, he was asked finally. I'm really looking forward to pre-season. You start afresh with all the hopes for the new season with new faces and ideas. New players give new ideas. Todd has had a freedom to move around the pitch since coming in and gives the team a new idea. Nicholas is so tenacious too, and I'll be looking for new players to come in and start. This period now is important because it's a huge privilege and responsibility to play for this football club. One thing I'll say is that I didn't know how the fans would be. They've had a heavy season, but it was a full house and the atmosphere was a real positive one. It was much more positive than the players could have expected after last week and more positive than it's been of late. Fair play to the fans. Yeah, absolutely. And the rendition of God Save the Queen as well was magnificent. So hats off to each and every one of you. There was at Ibrox yesterday, and that was, absolutely brilliant. Interesting point on Cantwell as well. I thought he was brilliant again yesterday. That he's just a top player. His goal, the technique for the goal was sensational as well. He is loving his football at Rangers. Brilliant bit of business bringing him in, and he's really taken to the fans, hasn't he? And the fans have taken to him. I thought he was brilliant again last week against Celtic. Didn't deserve to be on the losing team. And yeah, I thought he was good again yesterday. I'm really excited at seeing him next season. Right, let's get to a few more comments before we wrap up for the day. Scott Ferguson, Derek, do you know what the pre-season plans are yet? Not 100% sure at the moment, Scott. We'll try and get a clearer picture in the following days and weeks as to what the plans are, where Rangers are going to be heading off to. I'm sure it will be abroad somewhere. I know the fans, when I jetted off, we went to Portugal last season, but with the team, of course, culminated in that farcical game against Sunderland that had to be abandoned at halftime due to floodlight failure. But the fans always turn up to these pre-season tours, so I'm sure that the supporters, I've seen a few contacting me actually asking what the plans are because they want to get their trips booked as part of folks' summer plans, of course, where Rangers are heading off. So as soon as we find out, Scott, we'll let you all know. Good evening to James from Down Under. Good to have your company as ever, James, this morning or this evening, of course, where you're watching us. Tam Brown as well, just on the issue of Cantwell, says that he's carrying us to the end of the season. I would like to see him with other players round about. I know he was asked about Kieran Dowell after the game yesterday when he was speaking to the press. Todd Cantwell, I thought was interesting, of course, former teammates at Norwich City. He was asked, he's obviously played with him, what sort of player is he, and is that something you'd welcome? Todd said, yeah, he's a good player. He's someone I enjoyed playing with. We had success at Norwich and he's a top lad. None of that is really to do with me. It's a manager's choice, the club's choice, and his choice. If that is something that happens, and I'm sure the Rangers fans will be happy, and by all accounts, is understanding that that deal is all but done, and he will be one of the first names joining Rangers in this summer. So it will be interesting. I know he has had recent knee issues, but he's a player. Last time I watched him, as I mentioned before, he was on loan at Wigan from Everton, and I was impressed by him. He then earned his move to Norwich City and had done it reasonably well for them as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can stay fit for a start, which will be good. I think that's one big concern for supporters heading into next season is the raft of injuries that have plagued the squad this season. That cannot happen again if Rangers are to stage a proper title challenge. The high caliber player that have been out long term this season just cannot happen again. So yeah, it will be interesting. But yeah, certainly by all accounts, Kieran Dowell will be joining Rangers in the summer. Let's get to more of what Todd actually had to say before we wrap up. Always a pleasure to speak to Todd. I always enjoy listening to him. He was asked, are you enjoying your time at this club? Yeah, I'm really enjoying myself. I feel physically fit and it's my job to perform well when I'm here. How important is pre-season for you? Pre-season is always important. I know the manager is looking at recruitment, but it's also important for us as individuals to get your body in the right condition. And he was asked, do you feel that the squad could do with a fresh break? I think it's playing for Rangers. You've got a big responsibility. This season hasn't gone how we wanted to go, but it's important to come back and change the outcome next year. And he was asked about goals. Is that something you felt you needed to add to your game from your time at Norwich? I can't say I planned on doing that because I hadn't, but goals are important. I've always been confident in front of goal, and I feel like when I get chances, I'll take them. It's important to show that you're here and get numbers. He was in, asked to talk through his goal. We had a corner just before, and I said to Suits that I'm by myself, so if it goes over your head, then just block him. It's almost like Tav Heard because he put it in the same place, and the technique did the rest. Yeah, absolutely. It was an exquisite finish from Todd Cantwell. So then he was asked, so it wasn't something that was worked on in training. I think H, as in Harry Watling, will say that. So, yeah, it was something that we worked on in training. And do those sorts of names, talking about Kieran Dell, encourage you about the level of player potentially coming into the club? In terms of recruitment, it's kind of irrelevant because you've got a group of players in pre-season fighting to be in the starting 11. We've got everything to play for next season, and the hunger in the dressing room will be real. Whoever is there playing for Rangers, it's important to know you'll be fighting for your spot and to win every game. And he was then finally asked, would you encourage players from the English Championship to come to Scotland? It's important you weigh up your opportunities. I can only speak for myself, but it was a massive decision, but also one that I'm really proud of making. It's one that is common to come up here and show what I'm about. And by God, he's shown what he's about, isn't he? He's been terrific since he's come up. Yeah, hats off to Todd Cantwell. As James Keane says, it was a cracking goal. It certainly was. Right, I think that'll do us there, folks. Thanks to everyone for coming on and interacting with the show this morning. It's greatly appreciated. First of all, here, Jim McKerrow gets in just a point here. Says, well done on your own, Derek. I owe you an apology. I mentioned to Johnny at halftime yesterday that since you weren't at the game, we still had a good chance of winning. My apologies. Yeah, I think that only applies to European matches, Jim, to be honest with you. But yeah, in saying that, I came up last week for the game at Hampden and Rangers lost. So maybe I am the jinx. So maybe I should stay as far away from Ibrox or anywhere else when Rangers are playing as possible. So yeah, apology accepted, Jim. No bother at all. Right, thanks to everyone for interacting with the show. If you want to subscribe to the website, head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. Just £2.99 a month. You won't be disappointed, folks. Some of the content on there is absolutely sensational. We'll be back again tomorrow, and I'll be joined by a colleague tomorrow. I think Joshua's back on with me, so we hope you can join us then. Until then, if you're off on this bank holiday Monday, then I hope you have a cracking day. And if you're working as well, then enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.